back to the Zero to Here podcast. I am your host, Denny Dumas. Producer Carl is here wearing the most plain shirt I've ever seen him wear, actually. What's up, Carl?
How's it going, Denny?
I'm good. Tonight, our guest, might as well go straight into his intro. Partner at Cahill, Chartered Professional Accountants.
Yep.
And all my listeners right now are going, oh shit, why the hell is he have an accountant on the show?
It's going to be super boring.
But the goal of tonight's show is to prove the quote that all accountants are boring wrong. So there's a lot of pressure on you tonight. There's a lot of pressure on you tonight, Jordan. Oh. You're speaking for an entire industry.
Wow.
You have to show the
weight of the world is on my shoulders now. Yeah.
You have to show the personality. There's a few other things that I want to get into a little bit tonight. I know that your website is really good on Google, so I want to talk to you about putting effort into that.
For sure.
And I know that your socials got a lot better in the last year-ish, maybe?
Yeah.
So just chatting a little bit about that as well. Let's get to know you a little bit. I always ask my guests to describe themselves in 3 words.
Oh, nice.
So
should I have done some homework or what?
No, it's better when it is natural. What 3 words would you use to describe your personality, who you are, where you came from, whatever it may be?
I think, I don't know, maybe the first to be cliche is like perseverance, you know?
Like it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes a lot to kind of, push through and have confidence in yourself, put yourself out there, as a business owner a lot. So you have to be willing to, try hard and put yourself out there and just, take failures with a grain of salt kind of, or take it as a learning lesson. I know you talk a lot about failures sometimes.
A lot about it.
As a self-employed individual, I think you have to be in a certain headspace to be able to, frame those in a positive way and use it for energy to kind of push forward.
For sure.
And not even, that's kind of a theme in my life, like even going back before I was self-employed, I feel like even going through school, like university and everything, like I struggled a lot, you see people around you that are really smart and it seems easy to them. I feel like, I had to kind of push through and make my own way a little bit. Yeah.
What else? That was one. Perseverance.
Oh, that was
Which
one.
I like.
That was a good one. Yeah. I think kind of like laid back. I don't know. That's 2 words, I know, but
that's fine. Chill.
Yeah. No, I try to take sort of a laid back approach to, professional but laid back, like approachable, I guess. I find that works well. A lot of my clients are sort of like, a lot of my favorite clients, I'd say, are more blue collar guys that are, in business. Maybe they don't have the business acumen or the accounting knowledge that they feel like they need to run a business, but they look to me to fill that gap. And I feel like I can be relatable to that kind of person.
I can relate to that because I don't know if you knew this, originally going into university, I thought I was going to be an accountant.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So not that I did very high level accounting courses, but I did first and second year of accounting courses maybe. So I did like cost accounting and like some things that most people have no idea about.
Beauty.
And I did fairly well in them. So I have a very baseline knowledge of accounting, but still like going through the actual process of filing business taxes and like write-offs and like everything that you could go into it, it's so over my head. So I can only imagine like a really blue collar, like tradesperson that has zero math accounting knowledge trying to put all of this stuff together or even trying to explain it to them.
I feel like I have good skills in a way of like being able to explain things in a way that, or interpret what they can understand and explain it to that level kind of.
Yeah.
Because it's different, like depending on your client that you have. I mean, like I deal with, some engineers and I go, they want to see it in a very different way than like my plumber client wants to see it. But they both have businesses and they both have the same, like the tax planning is probably the same in both scenarios, but maybe the presentation and the delivery is a bit different. So
that's one of the biggest things that so now that we're growing as a real estate team, we have myself, my partner, and 4 other realtors. That's one of the biggest things that I stress with the other realtors on our team is one of the most key things to being successful in a sales role is being adaptable. have to be able to figure out how people understand information and provide your knowledge in that way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like for me in real estate, it's every buyer is completely different. Some want you to just literally give them your opinion. Say, do you like this place? Is it worth this list price? Whatever. Others want to see sales from the last 2 years, and they want a breakdown of price per square foot, and they want to see what else is sold in the building.
See the details.
Just tons and tons of numbers. So you have to be able to read people. Adaptability is what I call it, and provide the knowledge and information and expertise that you have in the way that makes sense to this person. And that's basically exactly what you just said.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's sort of a skill you learn over time too. And it is a bit of a trial and error. I mean, sometimes, I don't know, I can think of like my younger self going into meetings and thinking like, oh, I got this nailed, I'm going to talk about this and that. And then you look over partway through the meeting and the person, you can tell it's just going straight over their head. And you're like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? You have to kind of think back and you maybe reframe what you're explaining to them, or look at where they're coming from and put it in a way that they're going to understand, and, walk away feeling, okay, maybe I don't get all of it, but I feel like I'm in good hands here. And I know, the points that I needed to take away, I got those, right?
Yeah. And some people, they're hiring you for a reason. And so I remember a listing appointment I was in recently that start going through an evaluation. So we're talking a bit about ourselves, what we do marketing wise. Then you start going through an evaluation and you're showing them what's sold, and you can see they're not paying, like they're losing interest. And so I can see that.
Isn't it funny how you can tell when that happens?
It's so easy
like you
to
see it in
tell.
their eyes, they're like, you're somewhere else,
Totally.
right?
And so
It's the
I
worst
just
feeling in a
stopped.
meeting.
I
right?
think I showed them one other sale in their building, and I stop and I'm like, do you just want me to tell you what I think? And they're like, yeah, that's why we're hiring you. Because we know that you know more than me. And I was like, all right, I think it's worth X. And they're like, okay, perfect. Let's listen to that. So
yeah,
everyone's just different, but adaptability in any business sales role, I think is so important.
Yeah, for sure.
Perseverance. I talk a lot about it. You mention it in a way of using negatives to learn, move forward. Where does that come from? Did that start like as a kid for you? Was it, I know you played a lot of sports growing up. Was it through sport that you learned that?
I think
Because
maybe
I think
a little bit.
It's a really rare thing.
I think definitely a little bit in sports. Like I've played hockey since I was like 4 years old, and
Yeah.
I think back and on the car ride home, you get your dad talking to you like, "Here, you gotta do this better. You gotta do that." Right? And it's like, maybe it starts there a little bit for sure. I play a little bit of basketball as well, not to your degree, but I think in sports, it's a lot quicker of a turnaround too, because there's mistakes, especially hockey, right? Like you go, every shift is different. There's mistakes you make.
Mm-hmm.
There's good things you do, and it's really quick, and you can learn from that. Maybe it is rooted in that. I think a little bit. I think partly, I'm an oldest sibling of a larger family. I got 3 younger brothers. I think part of it's from that, where you're always kind of going into the unknown a little bit, like from the beginning. You're the first person to do it in your family a bit. I go back to school kind of. I feel like I struggled through that a lot, and I'm glad I got through it, but it was tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting that you say you struggled in school.
I'm hard on myself. I say I struggled. Like I was a solid B student. Let's be honest here. I wasn't very few A's, very few C's. I was a very, very average student. And, we're talking about university here, but I think the standards are pretty high these days. And I don't think getting straight A's is necessarily the most important thing to, equate being successful in business. Maybe it's in some areas, maybe it is really important. I think, like again, going back to engineers or, people in the sciences, I think, intelligence there is very powerful, and it's a different type of industry. But being a good business person, I know people that never went to university that are like amazing business people because they have that acumen that, they're good salespeople, or they're good at something, right?
Some of the some of the wealthiest people I know and who have run really successful businesses didn't go to university. I just think it's such a like a philosophical knowledge that university teaches you. It's like read and reiterate this material.
I feel like
whereas it's very little practicality. It was my experience of university.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, you walk out as a grad and you feel like you don't know anything more than when you walked out of high school. Really, like except you spend a lot of money, right?
Except you have a sweet
huge
piece
loan.
of paper now that says this person is able to learn.
Yeah.
Basically is what a degree says.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, that has a certain merit, like when I look for employees now, it's a nice, you do look for a degree because it is just ability to learn. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's a philosophy degree or whatever, you go, hey, you've committed to something, you started, you finished, like that's good. It's not the be all end all though. I agree though. Like, I mean, I know a lot of clients that, some of my most successful clients, I would say probably don't have a university education, but they're, self-taught and they have some sort of motivation to push forward and, maybe they had a really good idea and just stuck with it. Right. And didn't give up until it was successful.
I learned, like I've said this before, but I learned so much more bartending at my dad's bars for 5 years than I did in like 18 years of schooling. And it was just like a practical knowledge that you learn. You learn, one, how to be adaptable because you have an electrician sitting beside a lawyer, sitting beside a stay-at-home mom, sitting beside like whoever. So you have the way that you communicate to people has to be different based on who they are. Yeah. And you deal with a lot of shit at bars. And I also had a pretty cool opportunity in terms of like seeing the back end side of a business and doing all the numbers and doing deposits and like scheduling. And so like being in a leadership role as well, which was very useful in terms of real life running a business, which you can't really teach that stuff in school, or it's hard to teach when you're sitting in a classroom.
No, I think there's two components. I mean, I think in some ways you either have it or you don't to some degree. And then you have to learn, it's kind of trial by fire. You have to throw people in there and just see how they do and see what comes out of it. I mean, some people don't learn well like that, but I feel like the people that are really good in business, they will learn that way. Like they might fail a couple times, but if they're going to, if you want them to be really good, you have to put them in there and they have to be vulnerable. They have to make mistakes and learn from it. And then they grow from that. And I know myself, that's how I got, that's how I grew, I think, the most. I think back to even when I worked downtown at like, one of the accounting firms there. Like there's so many times where you're in a position where you go, there's no way we're getting out of this. Like, we're working and it's like 2 a.m. and it's a nightmare. And you're like, we're never going to get through this. It's a disaster. You always somehow get through it. And then when you get through it, you go, okay, when this happens again, I'll remember this thing. You never really remember that though, because it'll happen again. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is happening again. Like, how are we going to get through it? But you always learn something from those experiences, from those kind of like crisis situations, or maybe a mistake happened or some sort of like, failure. You always do learn from that and you grow from it. So I think you have to, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, kind of. It's like if you go learn to ski, if you're not falling over, you're probably not trying hard enough and you're not going to learn how to like be good at it, right?
I always say like goals for me are not really necessarily meant to be reached. They're just to set this ridiculous high standard that makes me try every day. And so I don't get there and then I'm like, this is a bit of a failure, but I learn.
I like what your last guest said. So Scotty was on, and he said, he's like, if you reach a goal, you failed to set a high enough goal. And if you don't reach it, then you failed as well. So it's like, no matter what, you're failing. Like that was an interesting comment, because I kind of feel like that's myself too. I'm my worst critic sometimes, where, you get these feelings of like, oh, like how am I ever going to do this? And then you have to just kind of, I don't know, you have to get through that. But it's a blessing and a curse, because it motivates you too, right? Like if you don't have that in you, you can just sit back and go, well, okay, I got it pretty good. I guess I just won't try anymore, But I don't like that. That's not a good standard,
I learned pretty early, and I think it was through sport, that the losses and the failures mean a lot more to me than winning. And so I think it's a rare thing. And I know Scotty made that comment, which was pretty cool. But I think that's the reason I like setting ridiculous goals, is that one, they're really long term. So if I was ever to achieve them, it's going to be when I'm 50, 60 years old, not 30. And so
how do you think that far ahead?
I don't know. It's always,
you have
it's
goals
like
for when you're 60?
No, I just have these ridiculous
goal, but you might not hit it till then.
They're just ridiculous goals.
Okay.
So there's like no chance I'm going to reach them tomorrow or in a year from now. because they're crazy. Like the podcast, I want to get 10,000 views an episode. A goal. That's a goal. I'm not even close to that. What are we at now? 400 to 500 an episode. So we're pretty far off.
Yeah, but you're on a track, right?
Exactly. But it keeps me motivated. Like this year, the goal for the podcast is to do 100, which is a realistic goal, but the long-term big goil is 10,000 views an episode.
Cool. So we're laying groundwork here.
100%.
I'm super excited to be here, by the way.
100 this year.
I didn't get to say that yet.
Thanks for coming, man. I don't know if we've ever had a real in-depth conversation. It's always been like accounting and business and, well, I guess we've had a couple beers with Steve.
We have, yeah.
Steve. Steve.
I always come away from meetings with you like just feeling like really relaxed and good. I don't know what it is. It's interesting. The last year-end meeting we had, I don't think we talked anything about accounting. We just talked about like social media, marketing. It was like 5 minutes. You're like, here's your thing, here's your numbers. Yeah, and then we talked. Then we went for a coffee, and it was like an hour later. It was like, I was like, I hope he knows how much tax he needs to pay. Like, I don't know if we even talked about that, to be honest.
No, well, Vineet sends me an email, and it just says clearly, my corporation owes this, Denny owes this, whatever. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. I don't even need to meet you, I don't think, but I'd like to go for coffee with you.
Yeah, I always enjoy it.
I forgot about that. And we talked a lot about social media.
Yeah, we did,
didn't we?
Yeah, I think that was when you're first getting going, like on your journey that you're in now. You know what I mean? Like just changing gears.
Totally. I think so. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get into social media. I want to know. Well, were you just like born and bred to be an accountant? I want to know that because your dad's been an accountant for ever. As long as
he got his CGA in 1992.
Okay, so just after you were born, a few years after.
Yeah.
And was it like a goal from the beginning?
It's weird. I mean, like I've been exposed to the industry since obviously a young age. Sure. And, you know, when I was growing up, I worked at my dad's office from time to time, like just doing paperwork, whatever, shredding different things. And, you know, when you're in grade 7 trying to, you know, earn $5 an hour kind of thing. And you're like, okay, come in on the weekend. I got to go in. Right.
I did that too, but with my dad in the pubs. Yeah. So I would go in with him at like 6 a.m. and do cash, basically like counting money from the night before.
Right.
And like counting pull tabs and stuff like that. And it would be like 2 hours and I'd make $11 or something. And
but it was awesome,
it was
right?
Sweet.
Yeah.
And then he would have to do like some other office work. So he's like, just go play pool because there's pool tables in the bar. So I'd just like go play pool by myself.
When I was like, used to say, just go play at the photocopier. Like,
you were that guy that started photocopying your ass, weren't you?
No, but I put my no, I didn't do that. Let's be clear. I did one time. I photocopied like a $5 bill, and I somehow like superimposed my face onto it, and I photocopied that. That was kind of cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. It doesn't sound as exciting as playing pool, though. No.
I got pretty good at pool when I was a kid, actually, because I was there like 4 or 5 days a week in the summer, anyway. Mm-hmm. So when did you decide accounting was your thing?
You know what? I rebelled against it for a while.
Did you?
Yeah, I think, you know, in the back of my mind, I always knew like accounting was a good groundwork for business. And I knew I wanted to go into business of some sort, but you know, it's like, I don't know, if you graduate high school and you're like, what am I going to do with my life? Nobody really knows. Right. I knew my dad was, you know, successful with his accounting business, and I kind of was like somewhat interested in that, but I wanted to explore different areas. And I kind of rebelled against it, and like I didn't really go into accounting in school right away. I slowly kind of moved that way, and mostly it was just sort of like a backup. Like, well, if I don't know what I'm doing, I think it's a good groundwork. Like if I know accounting, I can probably figure out other businesses and be successful in that. It'd be nice to be able to understand the numbers a little bit. Yeah. And then as I went on, I was like still not really knowing what I was doing, so just, you know, connected with people. And this is a point I wanted to make. Like university, one of the best parts that I found about it was just the people you meet and the connections you make. Like really, that's what my experience was, where there's a bunch of guys going, like really wanting to go into the accounting program, going hard. And I kind of connected with this group, and that's how I got my job downtown at Deloitte. Like, you know, these guys were going to these interviews and all that. So I kind of just tagged along with them and went along with that process. And I just pushed it as far as I could, kind of like, you know, if I wanted to do accounting, I wanted to do the CA route, because back then it was, you know, the 3 different kind of designations they had here. Yeah. So the CA was sort of like the more prestigious one, quote unquote. So wanted to go down that way, and just kind of saw it out. I was like, well, I'll go and do the best I can. And if I fail at some point, I'll maybe change gears, but I'll just keep going. And if I don't fail, I'll go this way. So ended up getting a job at Deloitte out of university, kind of grounded out doing, audits and all that kind of stuff downtown, working long hours, the typical kind of thing there. But
that sounds exciting.
It was super exciting. You know what? It was... Well, let's step back a little bit actually before, because there's more to the story. I mean, before I did that, I did a stint at the government a little bit, like working at CRA for the dark side.
That sounds even more exciting.
That was, yeah, exciting. It's not the word to describe that. But again, that was through school. That was like a co-op position.
Mm-hmm.
Edit that out. Sorry.
No, good.
So yeah, that was like a co-op position that was, through the school, kind of like, hey, be an auditor. And that was an interesting experience working for the government, to be honest. Like, I was excited because it's like you get to see the inside. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I knew I probably didn't want to work there forever because I was like more of an entrepreneurial type guy, but I'm like, I want to like see what it's like on that side. And I worked there for about 3 years, like on and off, some full-time, some part-time throughout school. And it was just really interesting to see how like that works and how slow everybody is there. And like, it's like all of the cliches. It's really, really strange working for the government, but it was cool, like learning the inside scoop and like what they look for. Like, I was auditing people's taxes. I was like a second-year university student. Like, let's be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I'm going to sound like Steve here. Steve might have used different words, actually. I think he said he didn't know shit, but I kind of didn't. And I'm like, I would be like, okay, yeah, here's this guy, Denny Dumas, this realtor. Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing here. Look at this tax return. I don't even know. Going through there, auditing expenses, asking you for receipts as if I knew what I was doing, right? But no, you know what? It was interesting. They put you through some pretty good training there. And it was really cool to get the inside scoop when I was there. But definitely was kind of happy to leave when I did.
You say you always felt you were more entrepreneurial than working for big corporation for the government. When did you decide that was something you wanted to pursue? And at the same time, like, how did Cahill begin, I guess?
Okay, yeah, two big questions there. It's tough to know exactly when that happened. I mean, like, again, like my dad being an accountant for a long time, he was, probably at the like sort of partner ownership level since I was pretty young, in various different roles in different companies. And, I think he instilled those values in me of like, there's a certain benefit that comes as being the owner. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make more money. It means like you're going to, you have flexibility. You can kind of make it what you want. And I think that was very attractive to me. So I think probably from a young age, I probably knew I wanted that, but it's hard to know, even like in high school, again, like you don't really know what you want to do. Right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it was somewhere in the back of my mind for quite a long time since I was probably
my story too. And
yeah, because your dad, like, I mean, it sounds like our stories are similar that way, where like if you grow up in that environment where like, you have somebody in your family who's self-employed, I think you see the benefits of that, but you also see the challenges, and there's two sides of it, right? A lot of times people from the outside might look in and go, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be great? Like, you run your own business. Isn't that so amazing? Like, yes, there's many very good things about it, but there's also a lot of unique challenges that you run into that you have to be prepared to face that I think a lot of people don't realize. And if they get put in that position, they might not be comfortable with it.
I just kind of put this together in my mind right now. I like situations where I'm in control. And not that means I want to be like an obnoxious leader or like dictator, but more I want the success of my business, my life, to be based on my decisions. And if something goes wrong, it's something that I didn't do. And so I felt like I had a 5-month stint at a bank, and I felt like no matter what happened, if I showed up or not, it literally didn't matter. Like, I was worthless basically. And so I learned that from a young age, probably watching my dad, but probably through sport as well, that like my success in sports was based solely on how hard I worked. It didn't matter if someone else was better on me on the team, that didn't matter. But if I was lazy, I looked bad. And same thing through business from watching my dad. But I like situations that I'm in control. And so I always knew I wanted to work for myself because I could control the effort that was put in to try to achieve an outcome. And
whereas like you're an employee at a bank is sort of like, here's your list of duties.
Exactly.
You go about your day. If you're not here, we'll get someone else to do this kind of thing.
Pay this woman's hydro bill. Yeah. Those are the worst. I was like, yeah, you can do this online, right? She's like, oh no, I just have so much fun coming into the bank.
Yeah.
All right.
Some banks charge for that now, hey? Extra.
Do they?
Yeah, I think so.
I've never gone to a bank to pay a bill, so I've no idea.
Neither have
I. Okay, so Cahill, how did that start?
Yeah,
because your dad's been in the business for a long time at this point.
He has, yeah. So,
but he's never kind of branched off and started his own firm.
Well, no. So he was involved with a partnership for, So Cahill started officially like January 1st, 2013, basically. Okay. And before that, my dad was part of a partnership in Port Moody area. Him and another guy, and they were doing that for about 10 years. So he was a partner there, and I had just kind of finished working downtown, and I was like kind of ready to make the jump. I decided I wanted to work for some, smaller companies, probably like owner managed business. When I was working downtown, I was doing mostly like, big public companies for the most part, like auditing. And it was interesting in its own regard because you get to go into these big companies and kind of like open their books and, see things that you probably wouldn't see until you're at the executive level at these big companies. Yeah. But I don't know. I learned a lot doing that, but I felt like it wasn't as personal, and you're kind of in the back end, and you're also like the auditor. So like you're kind of the enemy a little bit. Like you're not really helping people. Yeah. Like you are, but you aren't, It's not as bad as being an auditor at CRA where you're literally like ruining people's days. But I decided, I wanted to, help out kind of owner managed businesses and, contribute kind of more to that side of things. And, my dad was ready to kind of split with this other guy. He said, it's time to kind of, do something different maybe, and approached me and said, why don't we like open a family practice? And, I thought that was a great idea. And, a practice came for sale in North Vancouver. So small practice. Guy was he was there for a couple of years, and he was moving back east because he'd got married, I guess, and his new wife lived in Ontario. So he wanted to move over there, and he's like, I have these clients here. I want to sell this client list. So, we had never purchased a client list before, but we decided, well, my dad had a certain number of clients kind of under his belt because he'd been doing it for long enough. I had a few clients I kind of worked with on the side, but, since I was working a full-time job downtown, wasn't really fully on my own at that point. And I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to, let's try this out. Why don't we buy this practice, kind of combine efforts and see how it works.
How do you value a client list?
How do you value it?
Because it probably wouldn't be the same as real estate, but relating it to other businesses, you can buy a number of clients. Mm-hmm. There's no guarantee they're staying with you.
There's no guarantee. Like literally all you're buying is like the opportunity,
an introduction, basically.
Yeah, an opportunity to sit in a meeting with somebody that needs a new accountant because the guy left and you saw him leave, so, and you just so happen to have their files. So it's kind of like you have a bit of an advantage over like other guys, but not much really, let's be honest. That was a big learning experience, but like, honestly, it was super successful. Like we had like close to 100% retention in that first deal, which is amazing.
Close to 100?
Like
that's gotta be like insane. I mean, like not normal.
I mean, if you want to be like, it was actually 110% retention because in the first year we did more business just out of that guy's book than what he sold us. Like we got referrals from the other people basically because they were like, oh, this is great. And it just really worked out really well. It was like the right place, right time, I think, kind of deal.
How did you value it?
So typically,
you look at like his gross revenue for that year or what?
Yeah. So with accounting practices, typically like the measure of value is sort of like based on gross billings. Okay. And it goes anywhere from like, I don't know, like 75 cents on the dollar to like, it can go up to $2 kind of value, but it just depends on like what type of clients they are. And like 2 would be super high actually, but it depends on how they're set up and how, guaranteed you are to kind of transition that client, I guess, what kind of work they've done. Is it recurring work? So usually you only pay for recurring work, like, like a year end, like a corporate year end. They're going to come in every year and do the same type of work, generally at the same price kind of thing, which is one nice thing. I mean, like the nice thing about the accounting industry is like, it's pretty conservative. Like whether the economy is doing good or bad, people need to file their taxes kind of. And like either people are making a lot of money and need some advice, or they're going bankrupt and they need some advice. So, like it's kind of nice that way versus like real estate, very good in terms of like, if the economy is doing really well, things are great. When they're not as good, you do see a bit of a downtick. Your clients, even if they're repeat clients, they're not buying a house every year. Maybe some of them are, but not all of them, right? For sure. So it's a little bit harder to build that list, but I mean, once you do, it's great. So yeah, so you kind of value it at $1 is usually like the kind of the mean. So I think in that first deal, I can't remember what we paid him. It was like 90 cents on the dollar kind of thing, right? Somewhere around that range.
Okay.
And we had never done a deal like that. So it was kind of like new territory to us, but we were confident in our abilities to kind of deliver a certain product. And people were generally receptive. It was just, they liked our style. And it was interesting because we didn't live in North Vancouver at the time. I had only been there for like hockey tournaments pretty much. Like I grew up in Coquitlam, right? Like North Van's a long way from Coquitlam kind of, right? Like it's across a bridge. It's, it's a half an hour drive, right?
Did you open an office in North Van right away?
So yeah, so the guy we took over from had a lease. So we took over his lease because I feel like it's kind of important to do that where, there's you have your corporate clients and you have your personal clients, and like during tax time, people were kind of like expecting to arrive at a certain office. So we had a lot of people that like almost didn't know that things had changed over. They just show up and like, oh, there's new people here. Okay, here, you can do taxes. This is great, right?
So it wasn't like a name change at that point or anything.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like, the other guy had a different name. So we, put Cahill on the door, basically. Yeah. So we did change the name, but it's interesting how receptive people are. People think that it's really, well, I shouldn't even say this publicly, but people think it's really, really difficult to change accountants. I think it's a perceived thing because it's a lot of work. Like, if you've been with somebody for a long time, they have your history, they know what's going on. And like, it's hard to find a new person that you would trust. And then, moving things over seems very difficult. In reality, I mean, like if you come to my office and you meet me and you want to work with me, we do the rest, right? Like we'll get the background. We'll contact your old accountant if if they have some information that we can't get, online or somewhere else.
I did it 3 years ago and it was pretty easy. I don't even know if I asked the old guy for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think
maybe like a notice of assessment or something, or you can pull that anyway.
Exactly. So if it's like personal tax, it's very easy. There's actually like almost nothing that has to happen because everything's available online. Like you can go on the government website. If we get authorization, we can see like 10 years of tax returns on there, and lots of other information as well. So we almost don't need the old stuff anymore. And that's kind of like new technology that's come in that's made things a lot easier for newer firms that are, going that direction, and leveraging on technology.
Okay, so Cahill starts. I'm assuming the practice that you bought was not at the level where you wanted it to be. It wasn't just like a purchase and coast.
No. I mean,
so from
to
that
be
point,
honest,
like, Go ahead.
I look back and I go like, if that practice was for sale today, like I don't know if I would buy it necessarily. Like I look back and it was awesome, and it kickstarted kind of what we have now, but it definitely needed a lot of work. And we put a lot of groundwork in there, and like you have to kind of, there's a lot of the stuff that was being done in the past wasn't really the way I would do it. And then it all, like in terms of the client base, it wasn't really being mined properly, like in terms of, asking people if they needed extra service and that kind of stuff. That's where we were successful. Like there was a lot of need for extra things that maybe the old practitioner couldn't provide that we could. So
from the point that you purchased that practice, how do you grow from there on out? And in terms of like getting new business, because I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this are like young entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And
the biggest thing with anyone going into self-employment is, how do I get business? How do I prospect? Where's the next deal coming from?
Yeah. It's, that's the tough part about any business for sure. I think your highest quality clients are going to come from referrals always. That's just, I think that's kind of, I don't know. What do you find?
Well, treating people really well and doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Customer service is number one for sure.
Absolutely. So
and that will always result in
it's
referrals.
way easier to retain a client than it is to get a new one. So do a good job on all of the clients that you have. That's kind of number one.
Yeah.
And then, some referrals will just come naturally. And you do have to kind of ask for them. I don't know. I'm not like too aggressive about that, but it is nice to put the idea in people's heads. People equate accountants sometimes with doctors where it's like, oh, you are taking on new clients? Like, of course I am. Like, I'm trying to build a business and I want to grow. And like, I would be happy to have any of your referrals. Right. Whereas like sometimes doctors, oh yeah, sorry, we're full. We're not taking any new clients. Right. So sometimes it's nice to remind people gently, like, we are taking new clients. Like that's a thing we do and we can help you out. And it's funny how far that small kind of little comment can go, because then people go, oh great. Okay. If I hear about it, I'll send someone your way. Where we've been really successful though, which I didn't realize that up front, like how powerful this would be, but just online, like, and I know you've done a lot of that too, between social media and just your website and all of that. It used to be Yellow Pages. Oh, what's somebody needs a service. We open Yellow Pages and look in there. Oh, it's accountant. A1 accounting services. They're in the top because their name starts with an A and it's a 1, right? Now it's more like, what is your SEO strategy on Google? Like, do if someone types in North Vancouver accountant, type it in right now. Look who comes up.
I did this morning.
Did you look it up?
Yeah.
Who was it?
You were number one.
Who was number 2?
Yellow Pages.
Oh, was it?
I think.
Yeah.
Not that it's actual book. It's the Yellow Pages website. So no, that's a good thing, because your competitors are shit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in that,
I think it was
realm
the
of
fifth one was another actual firm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we've worked hard on that and just saw like there's this little time of opportunity right now. I feel that we can get in there and be number one pretty easily. Like we do a lot of good work, but like honestly, like we haven't tried that hard compared to a lot of like I bet you real estate's much harder for SEO. Like there's a lot of players out there. I think, correct me if I'm wrong.
How many, do you even know the numbers? Like how many accounting firms would there be in Greater Vancouver?
In Greater Vancouver?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. On the North Shore, I can tell you there's like maybe like a dozen that kind of like compete with us more or less. But like, I would say we're probably the biggest, definitely the most prominent on social media and on Google. Because we have the most employees out there.
Yeah.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know.
In Greater Vancouver, there's 15,000 realtors.
Okay.
So like,
there's not that many accountants.
The number of accounting firms, yeah.
Yeah.
But the number of realtors is just so high that like you have to be good online or else you don't exist anymore.
Right.
Basically. So I think we do as good a job as anyone or better. But like that is
you have
always
a lot of reviews, which is
focus.
nice. Like you have a lot of good reviews.
It is huge for your SEO.
It's huge. It's huge.
If people don't know that, it's huge for your SEO. So one is having Google Dot, having a business dot on the map, saying that you're a registered business in North Van or Newest or wherever.
It's funny. I didn't even think of that. That's like a no-brainer in my mind. Huge. But like you have to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
and then Google reviews is huge. So like last year we did an email to any client that we had sold a property to in that year. We did an email saying like, for every Google review we get this year or in the next whatever month, I think we put time frame on it, and every Google review we get, we're going to donate $100 to this specific charity or whatever.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I think we did Children's Wish last year. But 1, it helps our business. 2, it's a good cause.
Yeah.
And 3, it is an excuse to reach out to past clients. So like it's a win.
That's huge.
But Google reviews are huge.
Yeah.
So if you haven't come up with a strategy to get more,
we've done a couple pushes, but I think that the donation one's good. It's a fine line because you can't pay people for reviews, and that's kind of corny at the same time. But like you do need to kind of get it in people's heads of, hey, like a review is really helpful to us. Do you mind doing that? Right.
Totally. And
ask for a 5-star review, because if you put it in their mind that it's a 5-star, they will do that more likely than not,
Yeah. You have to be we found that you have to be honest. So just like asking for reviews, people might get upset with, but just being like, this is the reason we're doing it. It helps our business grow.
Yeah.
We'd like to grow. If you were willing to spend 5 minutes of your time, we're going to donate $100 to this charity.
Yeah. I think the general public doesn't realize how much it helps small businesses to have good reviews, because they just see it like, I think most people, and even me in the past, would see it as like, oh, if you had a bad experience somewhere, like just warn other people, right? Because you see a lot of more bad reviews than good, like especially with restaurants and things like that, right? It's like you're more likely to leave a bad review than a good one, but you have to be reminded to leave the good one. And if there's a reason to, like a donation, I think that's a great idea.
I just don't understand who's spending their time to write bad reviews.
I know.
Like,
So I agree.
You had a bad salad.
So what?
Maybe it was a new chef or like whatever. Just leave it. Don't go back there. That's
I've
fine.
only left one bad review for a restaurant. One.
Really?
Only once. Yeah.
I will never ever write a bad review ever.
I wrote one bad review, and I was at this pizza place, and we were supposed to go to like a Whitecaps game. And we're like, let's stop in here for some pizza. This would be great. So we ordered some beer, whatever. Pizza took forever. We were there for like over an hour. They served our pizza to the wrong table. These people had just walked in, and then they just immediately like dug in and ate the pizza. And then we told the guy like, that was our pizza. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Can I make you a new one? I'm like, no, we've been here for an hour. Like, we're not waiting for another pizza. So they deserved a 1 star on that one. It was bad all around. Other than that, I agree with you. Because you know what? I'm an easy 5-star guy. Like if I go to a small business and I'm seeing that they're like really trying hard and they're good, I'll give them a 5-star just to help them out, because like I know the power of that, you know?
I don't mind people making mistakes. If people are trying and they're friendly, you're like, that to me is a win.
The pizza guys weren't trying that hard and they weren't that friendly.
Fair enough.
So
don't go to that pizza place.
Unnamed pizza place.
Social media. I know we had that. Was that conversation 2 years ago? We went out for coffee?
Might have been 2 years ago. Yeah.
Might have been. Okay.
Yeah.
I've noticed the Cahill brand get a lot better. You've been like consciously putting effort into it.
We have. Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't know any accounting firms in Greater Vancouver challenge all Greater Vancouver accounting firms to get their own social.
I challenge them too.
Who does it well?
I don't know of any other ones that do it well. Like, I mean, usually what it is that I see with other firms is like, oh, maybe they hired someone to do something and set it up. So you see a bunch of posts and then it just dies.
Yeah.
You know, like
3 month thing.
Yeah. Kind of like the podcast thing. I mean, hopefully, you know, knock on wood here. This is going to keep going on, right? We're past 13. That's a good sign.
We're doing 100 this year.
You're doing 100?
100.
Wow. You're committed.
Love it. We're on episode 20. But we have like 4 ready to go. So we're probably like 31 or something like that. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's so much fun. You get to talk to sweet people.
Yeah. Hopefully I can be a repeat
guest.
guest.
The most exciting account in Greater Vancouver.
Wow. There's a low bar. Very low bar.
Own it, man. Own it. Social media. What have you guys been up to?
Yeah. So
and why are you making an effort?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that like social media is not the future. It's now. Like you know, a lot of young people, that's where they look to get their information and kind of, you know, consume information from that medium versus like, even like before it was like Google. I mean, that's still huge, but I go like social media is even kind of bigger than that almost in a certain way. So you kind of have to have that angle, as a business, you have to be present on there. And like, we were talking before we started here, about just, I think in the past, you know, people would use a lot of like email communication, like, oh, I'm going to send out a mail out to my clients. Right. And I think there's a time and a place for that. And I think sometimes it's good to announce certain things. Like there's a big change in your business. Oh, we've brought on like a new partner. Oh, there's some new staff, or, you know, different types of announcements. That's good to do. You don't need to have a weekly email though. I think what you need to have is social media where people can go and consume it at their own pace. Mm-hmm. They can go in and they can follow you. If they want updates every hour, they can get that. If they want updates every week, they can go in once a week. If they want to go in once a year and just browse through it and see that you're relevant and keeping up with things, I think that means a lot to people. Especially a prospective client that maybe found you on Google, then they click on your website, then they look through your social media, they see you're active and updating all of those things. They're like, well, these guys must be good at what they do because they're updating all of these different mediums, right? So I just see it as it's good to stay up to date, and then it's a good way to either reach new audiences or reach your existing audience. Because a lot of marketing is just reaching your existing clients and reaffirming that the choice they made to work with you was a great choice. And here's why. Well, you were happy with your taxes, and hey, we keep you up to date with fun pictures of dogs too. Who knows, right?
The goal of any marketing is to create attention. Whether it's your client base, whether it's trying to attract new clients, you need to get their attention.
Yep.
Where is people's attention? It's on their phones.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Like I laugh at people who do like bus signs and like old school shit. Like No one is looking at your bus sign. They're looking at their phone. If someone's riding on a bus, they're looking at their phone. If someone's in their car, they're looking at a phone. Even the drivers are looking at their phones.
Yeah.
Right? No one is looking at the bus signs. Like, stop at a red light
I think, like,
and look at the
now-
4 cars around you. 3 of them are people on their phones.
Especially like, I don't know, in real estate, I think like the bus bench ads, like that used to be like a big thing. Now
It used to be the thing.
Now it's more of like a, I've spent enough on all the other things and I want to let other realtors know that I own this neighborhood. So I'm going to put my face on this bus ad. And that's it. That's it. Like, it's more just bragging kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my take on it. The non-realtor take.
It's interesting. I think it's just really old school.
Yeah.
Like, not many young people do it. It's just like,
Even going back though to my comment of like, sometimes marketing is like aimed at like the people who have already used you.
mm-hmm.
So say you had like a really big client in a neighborhood, wouldn't it be nice to put your face on a bus bench like right down a street? And then every time you drove down, they'd be like, man, I'm so glad I used Denny.
Okay,
that was amazing.
But my
For no other
my
reason than
argument
that.
to that is he's not going to see it because he's going to be on his phone.
Yeah, that's a good point. While he's driving, hopefully not, but
it is what it is.
he'll see
right?
it. He'll see it.
I'm not telling people how
I'm
to
not
live
saying
their
it's a
lives.
good advertising campaign. I'm
I
saying
don't
it's
think
like
they should
it's
break
probably
the law.
bad. It's money wasted, kind of, but
Exactly. Anyway, the reason I like social media so much is, one, it's super fun and it pushes me outside of my shy original shell that I was as a kid to show who I am and be myself. It's like a 24/7 online resume, right? So you said it's a good way for past clients to keep up to date with what you're doing.
yeah,
100%. It's your online resume all the time. It's a good way for new clients that hear about you, or let's say I recommend, Carl, you got to use Jordan Cahill this year. What's the first thing he's
Carl,
going to
you
do?
should, by the way.
What's the first thing he's going to do though? He's going to
Yeah,
type Jordan Cahill into Instagram and look at your Instagram feed.
Exactly. Right.
If he thinks you're boring, he's likely not going to think twice about it. If he thinks
And that's
you're
the
an
constant
interesting
challenge
person,
with like being an accountant, like an accounting firm. It's like, how do you stay professional yet relevant and interesting that people actually want to follow you, right?
But I think that's the mindset that is changing. People work with people that they like.
Yeah, true.
People don't want to just see a dude in a suit and tie. I don't even like ties. If someone's wearing a tie, I'm probably going to avoid them.
I don't remember the last time I wore a tie. Let's put that out there.
I don't remember the last time I tucked in my shirt.
I tucked in my shirt today, but I haven't worn a suit in a long time. Probably since the last wedding I went to, whatever that was.
Once in a while, I do like wearing suits, but it's very
There is something nice
specific
about
events.
wearing a suit, though. You do feel like, I don't know, it gives you a certain feeling. I can appreciate that. You had a guest on, was it like one of your first guests, your mortgage
Sean.
broker guy?
Yeah.
And he loves like suiting up,
all
like
about it.
3-piece suit kind of thing. I can respect that. I mean, like that's cool. I mean, you have a workplace where everyone like suits up and they're like really professional. Like it gives you a certain vibe.
If it's your thing, great. And it's this guy's thing. Like he
If it's your
loves
thing,
suits, yeah.
like definitely. It's not my thing. And like in our office, we're a little more casual. And I think that's like almost a little unique for accountants, maybe perhaps.
But
Maybe
it's
not.
attractive to your consumer.
Yeah, you got
because you're showing a personality.
I'm not trying to wine and dine, some CEO of a public company downtown. Like that's not my clientele. It's like, it's average guys that run average businesses kind of thing, right? That need professional tax help, right?
That one day will be running the city.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like GD Real Estate. We like working with people like us who are young and ambitious and want to keep growing. We
Absolutely.
like the young family that is moving from a condo to a house.
Yeah, my favorite clients are guys that I can have conversations like this, like.
And share some Canadian whiskey.
Yeah, this is good. This is Canadian, eh?
Do you like this one? This is Surrey, Central City.
They make it look so Scotch-like with the bottle and the cork. Single malt.
It's because Scotch has all the attention. That's why.
That's true.
Right? We're back to attention.
It tastes Scotch-like, but
Single malt Canadian whiskey. I'm sure there's a lot of similarities. It's just not.
I don't think I've ever
made
had
in
a single
Scotland.
malt Canadian whiskey. This is the first. It's good.
Good story about this one, actually. I went to the liquor store. There was a gentleman in a beard working at the liquor store. And I said, I need a good Canadian whiskey. I don't know anything about them. I usually drink Scotch. I drink a little bit of Japanese and Irish whiskey too. And he's like, oh, just by his reaction alone, I knew I could trust this guy. And so he walks me over to this and he's like, you got to try this one. He's like, hands down, doesn't matter where it comes from in the world, this is the best whiskey under $50. And I said, I don't know if I believe you, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Good. It's good stuff. This is really good.
For under $50, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm into it. I like what you're doing on social media. So a couple things that you're doing. One is the Focus Fridays, just basically like showcasing your clients, which I think is really cool.
I don't know when
Small
this will
business
be published, but heads up, Denny. Friday.
This week?
I think so, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Focus Friday.
I hope you got some good photos of me.
So we'll see. Ask Crystal.
I don't think my shirt's going to be tucked in any of them. I like that. I think it's cool. One, it shows people how much you care about your clients.
Yeah.
But two, it's just like an extra little marketing tool for them. Right?
Well, and we use it as a collaboration because like we know everybody's trying to like, cross-pollinate a little bit with their followers, and it's a really good opportunity to just do that. And we can show our prospective or existing clients, here's who we work with and here's who these people are. Like they're real people and they're in the community and here's what they do. And then, when they repost it on their profiles, hopefully, we get a bit of exposure too. So it's a, give and a take kind of thing.
Where'd you get that idea from?
That's all Crystal. That was her idea. Yep. My wife.
Married a smart woman.
Yeah. Yeah. She's loving it. She's doing pretty good at the social media here.
How long has she been doing it for?
She's been taking care of it for the last, probably about a year.
Okay.
Probably the last maybe 6 months, she's gone pretty hard into it because, we have pretty young kids, so she didn't have a lot of time before to really go full into it. It was just kind of maintenance, more or less. But yeah, the last 6 months or so, she took a few courses actually at Cap College. They had these social media marketing kind of night courses, and they were really good. Very, very interesting kind of ideas and concepts, and a lot of just kind of what we're doing here, like just conversations of like what works, what doesn't work, and with people who have experience in that industry, and that gave her a couple good ideas, and then just keeping track of what's out there, right? Like what you do, like just seeing what other people are doing and what works, and testing different ideas out. Like the Focus Friday was totally just an experimental thing, and it just blew up, and it's been pretty good. So we'll keep doing that. Do you use
the social media ad platforms?
Pardon me?
Do you use the ad platforms?
Yeah. So we do Facebook ads, like a little bit, not a ton. We don't spend a ton of money on it. It's just to kind of boost it up. We do some.
Have you had any success with them?
With the ads, yeah. Like, I mean, it's definitely worth the money you spend, but it's like, I wouldn't say it's huge. Like compared to like a Google AdWords campaign, it's a bit different. You're just trying to get out to a certain demographic in a certain area.
I would disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah.
Okay. Why would you disagree?
What content are you putting on those ads?
I'm not
Is it photos? What is it?
I couldn't tell you.
All right. You should find out.
I should find out.
I think those platforms are just like so cheap for the amount of attention that you get. Again,
it is
any
very
marketing
inexpensive.
is attention.
It's very inexpensive.
You want to get your idea, your business, your whatever in front of as many people as possible. That's the idea of marketing. And it's so cheap to do so. It costs you like $30 and you can get in front of 10,000 people. That's insane.
Yeah.
Name one other platform you can do that.
So when you do like a post, do you use Facebook mostly or Instagram?
So
for your ads?
They're together now.
Well, yeah.
Because Facebook bought Instagram.
Yeah, I know they're the same.
So when you post through Facebook, it posts on both platforms, but then Instagram Stories is a separate ad platform.
Oh, okay. We've never done the Instagram story ads, I don't think. Are those good
It's a
ones?
big one.
Okay, interesting. Good to know.
Because it's so
we
cool.
Focus on the Facebook ones. Just again, they're super inexpensive, and like you do get a very broad. Like you look at the numbers, and you're like, well, this makes sense, right?
Yeah. I just find it so cool that you can target the exact individual that you want.
It is very cool.
So you want self-employed people that live in North Vancouver or Burnaby or whatever.
Yeah.
That are between the ages of 30 and 50.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yep.
I think there's so much value in them, and I think the creative that goes into those ads is the game changer. So if it's like a photo of your logo and you use that as the ad,
not gonna work.
Super lame, never gonna work. If it's like you and your dad doing something funny or creative, just like showing your personalities and being like, we love working with young entrepreneurs, whatever, blah, 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 effective.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's
yeah,
a
some
creative
of
that goes
our
a long
most
way.
successful posts are just random. Like either we're at an event somewhere, we're just like a photo of like, hey, the family, we're just hanging out down here, at the shipyards or something like that. Boom, that'll get like 3 times as much as something else that was like engineered to like, try to, attract a certain audience, right?
People like people.
They do. Yeah.
People want to work with people that they like.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. And like, I make a really conscious effort on my social media to be as unfiltered as possible.
Yeah, actually, so one of our recent posts, we were up at Cyprus skiing, and it was like just pouring rain like 2 weeks ago. And my wife's taking ski lessons right now. God bless her. It was it was pouring, and I told her, I'm like, this is like the rainiest day I've ever skied in. So if you can get through this, like this is the worst. Nobody's out there, so we posted like a funny post about like how rainy it was, and Cyprus retweeted that, and we got like it was the most, I think, exposure we had ever gotten, or definitely up there. But it's interesting how it's like just a random little post like that can really, attract people or just, garner their attention.
It's just like the real stuff. It's not like someone who is just getting into self-employment and posts a photo of himself leaning on a Ferrari. Like, it's so easy to tell that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Like people like the real factor. So like driving your 1982 Honda Civic to a listing appointment. That's good shit. People understand and can relate to someone who is working their ass off, but definitely not there yet, kind of thing.
I think this is like a late 90s, right? 98 maybe?
No, it was like 92, I think. But I heard it, it's 6 feet under now, that thing.
Is it?
I think so.
Well, I know about 2 years ago, he texted me, he's like, do you know anybody who can like replace a clutch in a Honda Civic? So I sent him like 2 different guys that I deal with that are mechanics.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that seems kind of expensive. Okay, I won't do that. He still doesn't replace the clutch. It's been 2 years. I'm like, how do you even start going up a hill? So actually, so funny story. When we went with you last time, we went to, what was that brewery there? Steamworks. Yeah. So we went up the hill there, at Boundary to take a left, and he stopped. And he's like, yeah, Jordan, I don't know if we're going to start here. No clutch. He had the e-brake going.
So what's wrong with the clutch?
It's just completely gone. It's just worn out. Like,
so how does he change gears?
Like, it works, but barely. Like, it just slips nonstop. Like, if he goes too fast, it just starts slipping. I'm like, I don't even know how it still works. He babies the thing. Do you know that's Steve's first car that he ever bought?
That's his
first car.
He's only ever had one car.
He's only ever had one car in his life.
He's in his mid-30s.
Late 30s.
Late 30s. That is super impressive.
It's impressive.
I think I've had 6.
We can all learn a thing or two from Steve.
10 years. Steve's
Frugal
such a
Steve.
beauty. Steve is such a beauty.
He's a beauty. Did he bought a new computer finally?
Was he still working on his college computer?
Yeah. It was like an Apple MacBook that he had. I told him he should get a new one.
In his late 30s. That thing is 20 years old.
Yeah.
The processing speed on that thing's got to be low.
It only really, really annoyed my brother Taylor because for some reason, whenever he would send him PDFs as an attachment, Steve's computer wouldn't open them. But it was Steve's computer that was the problem. But he kept going like, Taylor, I don't know what you're sending me. This isn't working.
Speaking of cars, I heard you have a thing for cars.
I love cars.
Outside of accounting.
I have no cars right now. It's very sad. It's depressing. Well, I have.
That's why you give the big sigh.
I have one.
You like working on cars?
Yeah, it's fun.
What do you have like a favorite restoration that you've done?
Well, I have
according to Steve, I'm getting some of this backstory from Steve, so you can tell me if it's incorrect.
Sure.
But at one point, you were working on 5 different cars. Is that true?
There was a time not that long ago where I owned title to 5 cars at one time. Yeah, at one time. Yeah.
Where are you storing them? Don't you live in a strata?
Yeah.
Where are you storing these things?
Well, that's the problem. So I moved to the North Van. There's no storage here. Like, there's nothing, right? So I had to get rid of all of them. But when I was living in Burnaby, like, there's so many extra parking stalls down in the basement because it was like an older strata. So I just rented, like, I rented 5 stalls at $20 a month. It was cheap. So I still have.
Where are you working on them though?
I would work on them down there
in the parkade.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look at my Instagram. Or have you seen that?
Recently?
Well, not recently. the old, you can go back in time.
Okay.
I have a 97 Jeep TJ that I basically like completely rebuilt in my underground parking lot. It was a mistake because the floor is not level down there. And I like, when I say redid, like I cut the whole suspension off the frame and like redid the whole thing and like welded it up in the underground parking lot. And anyways, I rolled it over and it's kind of broken now. It's still underneath there, still stored. We'll see. We'll fix it one day.
The Strata was okay with.
Well,
you shooting sparks everywhere.
I mean,
or you were
define okay. Well, yeah, I was on Strata.
There
Yeah.
you go. That's why.
There's like 4 levels of parkades. It was the very, very lowest area, so no one really went down there very often.
You specifically found who owned the spot in the very back corner.
Yeah.
And approached them and said,
well, it was all rental. It was all rental, like down there.
Oh,
it was just like, it was the Strata owned it, so you could just rent them. So I rented the one spot in the very back. So
what's the coolest thing? Is that the coolest thing you restored?
I wouldn't call it restored. It was just sort of like customizing. Yeah.
It's a rat rod.
Yeah. So it was like, it was a Jeep, and then like, it had a 4-cylinder engine originally, and then that blew up. So I put the V8 inside there, and then when I did that, then it broke everything else because the motor was too powerful. So then I replaced the rest of it. Basically, yeah. Pretty cool truck. It's very fast. Way too much power for that small of a vehicle.
Where did you use it?
Pardon me?
Where'd you use it?
Where did I use it?
Yeah. I'm assuming you're not driving to work in that thing.
That was my daily driver for
Really?
like quite a long time. Yeah. When I was like, not when it was in that shape. Like it was when it was in like original kind of style. And then, yeah, I bought it pretty stock. Like it was, like a 4-cylinder Jeep with small little tires on it. And then I put some big tires on it. Drove that. Like I was working in Surrey for a while. I just, fit in perfectly fine driving out there in that every day. But yeah, I don't know. I've owned that for a while. Just kind of tinkered on it. Be nice to get back into it. I haven't touched it in like a year. Just sitting there. Like I said, I rolled it over and it's got a shattered windshield. Like you should see it actually. It's pretty bad. The windshield's shattered. There's no like roof on it anymore. And it's like just sitting in the underground parking lot collecting dust basically.
You didn't even put a tarp over it?
No. I wheeled it in there and just left it like May 2017. It's been sitting there since then.
That's funny.
Yeah.
We were, before we started recording, we were talking about the landlord life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I work with a lot of people that are thinking about purchasing a first investment property.
Yeah.
It's a glorified thing to own an investment property. It's not as prestigious and fun as you think it's going to be. I want you to share
it's a very, very
your pros
long,
and cons of being a landlord.
You have to have a long-term view. I mean, like,
Totally.
To be honest, I mean, it's like anything with real estate. Like, if it's going to be an investment, especially, you kind of have to have like a 10-year commitment because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know. You can't expect to be able to flip it very, very soon. Like, maybe in some markets you can, but I don't know. My mentality with rental properties has been like, just, go back to the accounting side, work out the cash flow, make sure that works. And then just, if you're able to stay in it for the long term, then, it will make sense. You look back in time. It might be naive to think that, the historical results will indicate future performance. Yeah. But I think, if you can make things happen for a long enough time, you will do well in that market. But, so what your question was just sort of like what advice for somebody who's getting into it for the first time?
Yeah.
There's pros and cons. Yeah. I mean, like the pro is like, it's exciting. I mean, like, come on, buying property is awesome. Like I'm addicted to buying property. Let's be honest here.
So am I.
It's fun. That's what,
as you know, so am I.
You share the same excitement. I mean, you got Carl over here. It's the first time landlord coming up pretty soon.
Coming up quick.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the pros are definitely like, you get bragging rights, right? I mean, come on. That's amazing. I think a long-term investment standpoint, yeah, definitely very, very good thing to do. I think if you're young, if you can figure out how to get an investment property and work that financing, talk to Steve,
especially if you can find something that's like cash flow neutral.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Someone's just paying down your mortgage every month.
Yeah. I think it's foolish to get into a position where like you're going to be cash flow negative. I think, you have to make sure it's like as well. okay, let's
One of mine
different
is
people.
pretty bad.
I'm talking to the average, like very risk averse, like young person our age that maybe has a bit of extra income or a bit of savings that they were thinking of investing in real estate. Like, real estate is very commonly like it's a leveraged investment. Like you're going to borrow money and then you're going to, buy this place. You're not going to buy it in cash, I'm sure. At least we aren't, like, let's be honest.
Definitely not me.
You have to have somebody like an accountant or somebody to help you run those numbers to make sure that you're going to be cash flow neutral at least. And just also have a bit of a contingency that, because things do go wrong. They will. Like, it will never be the ideal situation of like, oh yeah, it'll just run perfectly and there'll be no repairs. There'll be no problems. Yeah. The place will never flood. Like,
you'll never hear from your tenant.
You'll never hear from your tenants about broken toilet flushers. And
usually if you haven't heard from your tenant in 3 months, they're
probably growing weed. Like,
exactly.
Be honest.
So you need to
and
check.
Now it's okay. It's legal. So you're happy if they are now. Before it used to be a problem. Like, yeah, but once you get into it, it's funny how like, the sexiness wears off. You close the deal. You're like, yeah, I'm a landlord. This is amazing. And like, these are collecting rent. You're like, well, this is boring. Yeah. Like, but they say the best investments are the boring investments. It really is. It's true. Hopefully you don't hear from your landlord very much, but yeah, the negatives. I mean, we can go into kind of the story I was telling before we started the podcast here. I have tenants. It's 2 girls, and they rent a 2-bedroom place that I own out near Burnaby there, and they're great tenants. They pay their rent on time. They're very, very nice people, and they've been there for 2 years. But it's pretty hilarious renting to 2 younger women, and they don't have the male influence to help fix things. Maybe sometimes it's interesting. Like, tenant selection. Maybe this is like one of those kind of criteria you take into account. So I get a call or I get an email the other day like, oh, the dishwasher's broken. I'm like, okay, well, like what happened? Is it flooding? Like what's going on? Like, oh no, like we got up in the morning and it just wouldn't turn on. So I emailed them back. I said, well, and I was very specific actually. I was like, because I know them. It was like a 10-step process of how to basically go to the breaker box and flip the switch for the breaker and see if that does anything. I get an email back about 4 hours later, like, okay, yeah, the dishwasher works now. Don't worry about it. It's like kind of funny, right? These things that are obvious to homeowners or people that are responsible for these things, like,
it's just never been, they've never been in that position where they've had to maintain themselves.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
So sometimes you do get queries or questions about things that you think are obvious or that, should be kind of the tenant's responsibility, but you still get involved in that. And, I've been pretty lucky that my tenants have all been pretty good. So I'm okay with the questions like that. I get, I've gone out there and helped them with different issues where I go, it's probably actually their problem, but I like them and they pay their rent. So I'll go help them with that. And I prefer to err to that side of, if you have good people that are there, it's like employees too. Like, if you have good employees, good people that you work with, you're always going to go to the side of just helping them out and being a good person that way. And even if maybe it's not expected or, the norm to do that, I'd rather err to that side.
I am in no way a handy person at all. And I remember I bought this property in 2016, so I had a tenant in there right away. Like a couple months in, I can't remember what was not working, but something wasn't working. Maybe the lights in one of the bedrooms or their TV wasn't turning on or something. So there was an electrical problem. And so they asked, they're like, can you come over and have a look? I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? I probably know less about electrical than you. Like talking to the tenant. And so I go over and I'm like, okay, it's living room. The first thing I look at was the breaker and I just like flip it back on and TV works or whatever it was working. I was like, I feel like a savior. So you feel like this, like, but at the same time, I'm teaching myself, which is cool because I've never lived in a house by myself. So I've never really had the maintenance of a house. I've had condos, but not houses. And so it's just like a different ball game. And I was telling you earlier about the toilet flusher.
Yeah.
I had a text from a tenant maybe a couple months ago. And they're like, the toilet handle is broken. I was like, okay. So I was in New West close by that day anyway. So I go by. I'm like, oh, it's just the chain, like the chain broke. And they're like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, to replace this thing is like $5. Like, okay. And so I go grab one and put it back on. Again, you feel like, oh, I'm a handy guy, but like all I did was change a toilet flusher. Anyway, but at the same time, when you immediately get the text, you're like, oh shit, what am I gonna have to pay for this? Right?
Yeah.
There was, in that house, the crawl space is dirt and the drain tiles aren't very good. So in the winter, when it rains really heavily, there's water in the crawl space, which is normal. But last year there was a smell from the water sitting there going up into the house. So I had to
gross.
it's a bit gross, yeah. So I had, the crawl space is gross. The smell wasn't that bad.
Sounds like you're a bit of a slumlord.
I treated it properly, okay? So
you treat your tenants right, though.
I had someone go.
They choose to live there.
Exactly. I had someone go in that like a couple days later when the water drained. Who crawled into the crawl space and like spray foamed insulation underneath, which basically like vacuum seals it, so the smell can't go up anymore.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah, it was like $3,500. So be prepared.
I know a good spray foam guy if you ever need him again.
Do you? Okay. My brother builds houses for a living, so I just like, who do you know in insulation? So I just use that guy.
$3,500 sounds cheap, actually.
It's not a big area.
Pretty small.
It was like 1,100 square feet or something, so it wasn't that big. Anyway. Be prepared to answer your phone a little bit when you have tenants.
Yeah, it happens.
Silly questions, serious problems, all of the above. Just be prepared.
Yep. Sewage backups, floods, different things. They can happen pretty easily.
Especially when they're single family houses. Condos a little bit more easy, but
depends on condos
how
are like
they
stacked too, though, right? So I mean, like if there's a problem, it can come down to you, or your tenant can cause problems for people below you.
Yeah.
Make sure you have insurance. Get good insurance. It's cheap.
Exactly.
Because.
Okay, we got to start wrapping up. The last thing I really wanted to end with was usually I ask people to make the final statement of the podcast. With you, because of your knowledge, I want, and because of our demographic being a lot of like self-employed people, a few tax tips for self-employed people.
Tax tips?
Yeah.
All right.
Or things to be aware of, or extra things that maybe can save you money on taxes or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like generally for anybody self-employed, there's like a lot of things you can write off. Like the general idea is, anything you can justify that you've incurred to earn revenue or potentially earn new revenue, you can write off. So that's kind of the standard, right? Yeah. So some people don't realize that you can write off like, your home office or your vehicle for certain things, and or how to do that. So, we help a lot of people with that. When you get kind of into, making a bit more money, there's a lot of realtors out there that have done quite well in the last few years. Sometimes incorporation makes sense because, a lot of what we deal with is personal tax, but then some of it's corporate as well. So it's sort of the questions between when do I incorporate? Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. So that's something that we help a lot of people out with. And there can be significant tax savings in incorporation depending on what you're wanting to do in the future. If you're self-employed and you could earn your money through a corporation, that's really good. It helps with, being able to invest in rental properties or different types of things going forward. Yeah, I don't know. What other tax tips are there?
Those are two that I was expecting you to say.
Yeah.
Those are two things that me and you have talked about quite a
For sure. I mean, like those are two, they're pretty broad too. I mean, like everybody's situation is very unique too. And that's the thing that I want to stress to people is like, if you have questions, definitely just reach out. I mean, I'm bad for it. I give a lot of free advice. Like it's kind of almost one of my marketing things where if people have questions, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with people and to see, hey, what's your situation? There's been many conversations I've had where it's like, hey, should I incorporate? And it's like, well, the answer is no, and this is why. And, it's in my best interest if somebody incorporates because it's a new client for me. But at the same time, you got to make sure it's, the right situation for them. Are they going to save money by doing this? Or is there going to be more work and more sort of like administrative cost in doing that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people don't understand even the costs that go involved in that are involved in incorporating.
Yeah, it can get kind of expensive, and that's part of it where you have to have, it's not about how much money you make necessarily. It's about how much money you're saving. Like how much money are you making in a year that you don't need to spend on your regular living expenses? Yeah. That's the biggest equation to it, because at the end of the day, like to incorporate a new company is going to probably cost you like $2,000 at the lawyers. Then it's probably going to cost you like 2 to 3 grand with your accountant every year, depending on what your situation is. And then there could be some other stuff too. There's some planning that goes in.
The lawyer to hold your books.
Yeah, exactly. So every year they're
which is a few $100s or $500.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like there's sort of an ongoing cost to it. It's more complicated, but it does give you more options where like, the corporate tax rate went down this year. Like if you're a small business and you make up to 500,000 net income, it's down to 11.5% this year, which is great. It used to be 12% and then it was 12.5% before that. So it keeps going down. So there's very few ways in the world that you can like avoid taxes completely, but there's a lot of ways that you can defer it. So we always focus on with that, with the corporation, you can pay that low rate and you can defer taxes for a long time. So if you leave it in the company and you don't take it out personally and pay, if you're now, personal taxes have gone up a lot too in the last couple of years. It's like 51% or somewhere around there for, if you're in the top tax bracket. It's ridiculous. It's more than half of your money is going to the government if you're over $200,000 basically now. So if you have a corporation at that level, it makes a ton of sense. The difference between 50% and 11.5% is huge. So you can take that money and invest it other places in the meantime. Yes, when you take it out and you want to go buy a fancy boat or a house or something like that for yourself, you have to pay those taxes. But if you're not wanting to do that right now, you can defer that to later on, right? So the biggest piece of advice I give people is usually tax deferral. And then sometimes it's to do with like, I didn't know I could deduct that. But I mean, that's rare. Usually it's like the other way around. I want to deduct everything. What can I not deduct? It's like, well, okay, you can't deduct like your suit dry cleaning because like, everybody else who works downtown has to do that too. It's a personal expense. Sorry. Like, I wish I could say yes, but you can't,
I've tried to write off clothing.
Clothing, technically, and it's funny, this comes from my CRA days, like working in the government. It's like, if people write off clothing, only like actors can do that apparently. If you're an actor and you own like your clothing or your costumes, technically that's the only clothing you can write off. Not even work clothes, like work boots and all that. Technically, you're not supposed to.
Interesting.
A lot of people do though. Can't end it on that note. That's super boring.
No, I have one more story. So Jordan, I've been working with Jordan for 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Yep.
This goes back to your free advice, actually. Last March, maybe.
Okay.
Was buying that property on 2nd Street.
Right. Yeah.
And there was so many different questions because the only way we could get financing, because both my partner and I are very over leveraged, is if we put in our personal name. So like, it was really cool to see how responsive, how quickly you were able to get back to me with like answers on how to set it up properly, how to make it tax efficient. I didn't even know this thing called a bare trust existed.
Right.
So you like gave me advice, say talking to your lawyer about setting up one of these so that even if it's in your personal name, it actually means that you're holding it for your corporation. So there's just so many things in the accounting world to defer tax and to save money on tax and to save money on investing through incorporating that I didn't know about. That was really cool. I'm sure not most accountants would not be able to get back to me that quickly, especially in March, which is like the busiest time of year. So thank you from that perspective, but also just like a shout out to the Cahills because one of so ask Steve and Jordan are pretty good friends who's been on the podcast before. And at the top of his email of like introduction or some points about Jordan was like best customer service by any accounting firm in Greater Vancouver by far. And he gave me like a few examples about it, but like reading that through that email, talking about customer service, like that immediately popped in my head how quickly you were able, and I think we spent like 30 minutes on the phone literally in your busiest month of the year, which was cool.
You know what? Like you bring up a good...
Sorry, by the way, because I wasted a lot of your
that's
time.
fine. Like, here's the thing. Like, I'm passionate about real estate too. Like I love real estate. So it's like, I was probably like, you probably got me and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I love this. Right. So, one thing I really, really appreciate is people who can just get deals done. Like there's very few people in the world that have that mentality of like, we got to get this done. How are we going to do it? Like, you know what I mean? Like you have a good client, this deal is good. It's just a matter of navigating that. And I can think of two people like Denny, you're a guy who gets deals done. I know that about you. Steve's another one of those guys. He always gets the deal done. And I guess I do too, based on Steve's comments, but like, I have this thing of like, if there's a deal on the table, we got to get it done. Like, it's one of those things. If I, you know, and you get a gut feel, you know when it's going to work. Like, and you also know when it's not going to work. And those are the ones you maybe just, you have to put aside. But at the same time, like, I really appreciate people who can get stuff done. And Steve's one of those guys. So like I had that feeling of like, when you were in the middle of that deal, I was like, this deal has to get done. Like, what do we got to do to get this done? And I think we looked at like doing it corporately at first because that made the most sense. And again, it goes back to the whole tax deferral thing, where if you can use corporate dollars to buy, you know, a rental property or a investment property, we have more money to work with there at the corporate level. Yeah. In this case, it's like, well, you know, and it's a delicate balance between finance and accounting where you go like, yeah, tax wise, it'd be great to get it done this way, but I know how banks work. They look at you, they go, a corporation, that's just a facade. We don't care about that. If the corporation defaults on a loan, we can't go after anybody. But if, you know, it's in your personal name, we can go after a person. That's a little bit easier. So they prefer to go out, you know, it's easier to finance that way.
I think one of the other things and the reason we wanted to do personal with this Bear Trust that I still don't really understand, but we
got to set that up still.
We do?
Well, I mean, we got to file some stuff. We'll talk about that.
Let's make a note of that.
We got time.
Is that the corporate, if you're buying property in a corporate name, the interest rates are much higher. At the time, the interest rates were like over 5%. And in the personal name, it was like 3.2 or something.
Exactly. So that's what it comes down to too, because like the bank looks at it and they go, we lend based on risk. Like all bankers do is that they assess risk. So if they're lending to a corporation, they go, well, the risk is higher because there's a chance that we could take you to court if you don't pay, and it's a company and they just throw it out. And we can't come after anybody. If it's in your personal name, like personal bankruptcy is a big thing. So like you're going to be more likely to pay that than if it was in your company, even if you personally guaranteed it and all this other stuff, right? So you will definitely get a better lending rate if you borrow personally, and I see a lot of people do that. And we can set it up in a way where everything is in your personal name for legal purposes, and then it's in trust for your company. So there's just a few things to sign and basically file with the government to say, you know, for tax purposes, you know, we're treating this thing in your company, but, you know, for the purposes of financing and, you know, legal title, it's held personally. So, do that quite a bit, actually.
It was a good learning experience for me.
Yeah.
Now I know when talking to clients too, that this is an option.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, like I have a few properties that are like in that position as well. You know, it's not always nice having all the debt in your personal name, but like at the same time, it's like, well, it's cheaper, so I might as well do it that way. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to go to a listing appointment.
All right.
Thanks so much for coming on. It's good to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'd love to grab a beer sometime soon.
Likewise. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Maybe after tax season, because I know you're just like ramping up into it right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe I can be a multiple podcast person here too.
Ooh.
Much? Is that asking too much? I wasn't that interesting, was I?
Jordan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Denny.
I'm sure we're going to chat soon. Have a beer.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. Hit me up on Instagram. Love to hear your feedback. Denny.Dumas.
Cahill CPA.
There you go.